Welcome to the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. On Mondays, you will receive direct therapeutic support from a licensed therapist or professional connected to the mental health field. They will provide therapeutic and educational resources to help you have a healthier relationship with your family members. On Wednesdays, you will receive direct tips and resources to help you get through the stuck places that prevent many people from having the relationships with their families and significant others that they desire. On Fridays, we want you to visit our blog, which can be found at www.blackmftmatters.com, which holds additional resources and action steps that you can begin implementing immediately to improve your relationships. This is necessary because we love that you are listening, but we want you to take action too. While you are there, please grab our A to Z Relationship Bootcamp and be provided with the skills you need to immediately communicate better within your relationships. Please note that while the therapists on podcasts are therapists, they do not serve as your therapist unless you have signed a confidential agreement with them confirming that relationship. Thank you in advance for listening, and we hope you are inspired. All right, it's time for the show. Here is your host, Dr. Connie Omari.
Hey, welcome to the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. Today's guest is Mr. James Harris. Hi, James.
Hey, what's going on? Thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm doing great, and thank you for being here. All right, let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Harris. So Mr. James Harris is the founder of Men to Health. He is a licensed mental health professional and holds a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. At age 5, James lost his father and was placed into the Virginia foster care system. As a ward of the state, he was required to attend counseling sessions. However, he found those sessions unengaging. Typically run by white therapists who sat on a couch, James felt that they could not relate to the emotional and cultural issues he faced. As a result, counseling wasn't a service he took seriously, so he wasn't able to benefit from it. This unfulfilling experience followed James into his adult life. James deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and upon his return, he again tried therapy, and the experience was the same. In 2018, James created Men to Heal, a movement to bring awareness to the stigma surrounding mental health among men and underserved populations. James is an Army veteran, serial entrepreneur, and community advocate. His recent ventures include co-ownership of Brewers Waffles and the Well Art Gallery, and the opening of the Healing Hub in 2019, a wellness center that operates outpatient therapy, yoga, mindfulness, and financial resources to the community. That is amazing, James.
Thank you.
Yes. So you just kind of do it all. You start from when you were a child and you needed counseling probably, but didn't find it very effective, to being an adult and opening your own counseling business amongst other entrepreneurial things. How did you use your pain to find your purpose?
That's exactly what I did. I just had a certain level of resilience and a certain level of committedness that I wanted to overcome what I've overcame. And I didn't want to be in the process of, being like, I experienced what it is to be hungry and homeless, and I never want to do that again. So I just used my tenacity to ensure that I was able to, support myself, and not only me, but of course the people around me, my community and stuff like that. Just give them outlets and be a model to let them know that you can overcome any situation that's placed upon you.
Wow, that is awesome. So you obviously work with Black families as well. Would you say that having had your own counseling experience that wasn't very culturally relevant has been like a leading force into that decision?
So I work with. Did you hear my dog?
It's okay. We gotta have an animal to keep the peace and keep us relaxed.
All right, so pretty much I work with anybody that needs services. My area is pretty heavily African American focused. However, I definitely do think it is a difference between cultural competency and being from the culture. So for me,
Oh,
I definitely
yes.
want to ensure that I display and provide a certain level of empathy, support for the demographic that I work with. But being myself, again, being able to be that model and that positive influence as an African American male, I think is definitely important. So when I was in therapy, yes, it wasn't a cohesive and building experience. Like the rapport wasn't there at that age because of cultural reasons, whether that was his age or whether it was his ethnicity. But we weren't able to establish a fundamental relationship to give me the assistance that I thought I needed. And then, of course, fast forward later, same thing occurred when I was in services again for the two deployments that I had. It just wasn't a fulfilling experience with that therapist either. So the last experience was the veteran experience, and that's pretty much why a lot of veterans don't want to seek services. They tend to want to go to the groups because it's more identifiable. Like people, it's that shared experience. So for me, I just took that approach. Like I want to ensure that I'm giving people a shared experience. I'm giving people an experience of therapy that they can relate to, that they can build upon and process. Because one, I am you. I was in your position, whether you was the veteran or the young adolescent that was unrelatable to somebody. And I want you to know that you're not being judged. It's no hierarchy. We're establishing this thing together to better assist you. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that. But I definitely think it's because of the competency and being in a position to display a certain level of empathy based around my own situations.
As you say that, I can't help but just see what it's like to be in the room with you. I don't think I've ever had a Black male therapist, but I certainly have Black males in my life. And I know that when they're vulnerable, and I hope this isn't passing a bias, but I know it's very hard. Like, I feel like for me as a woman, I'm able to, like, even if let's say I have a fight with my husband, worst case scenario, I could go out, even if I'm not talking about my husband, I could go out with my girlfriend. I could say, oh, I've had a bad day. We could have lunch. Not too much of that right now because of COVID, but it's more socially acceptable. And even if I have to go to a therapist, and that there's some stigma there as well. But I just think for Black men to be able to say, I'm depressed, or I'm frustrated, or I'm, heaven forbid, angry, which, there's a stereotype there in itself. I feel like it's so hard. Do you find that you see that a lot in the men that you serve? And if so, what would you like to tell men that are struggling, men and boys, Black men and boys who might be struggling, but they just can't seem to connect to a therapist?
Sure. So what's not uncommon is for that to occur. Everything you just identified and highlighted is, those reactions that happen, not only for me in session, but of course in the community. A lot of people still feel, specifically men, that they can't express a certain emotion, whether that's from a societal standpoint of viewing vulnerability and weakness, or that's just from a standpoint of being raised based on a certain criteria of not wanting to appear soft or weak or whatever the case is. But using your example of the depression situation, I would encourage that guy. So pretty much what I do, to be honest with you, is re-educate men on different symptomology. So if we use the example of depression that you spoke of, I just educate them on men and women both just experience depression. It just look differently how it's displayed. Men tend to be depressed, and they display like the anger, the aggression, the sadness, the irritability, and of course, the those symptoms be overlooked and turned into something else, like, oh, he's just mad, or he's always, but no, he's dealing with unresolved depression. And a lot of people don't know that. So again, what I do is tend to educate that man or that family on what depression is. So from there, I just pretty much explain to them like a depression affects their ability to feel, think, and handle like daily activities. I break it down Not so much in a clinical sense, but I did break it down in a relatable way so that male can understand. So pretty much, like, think about it. Like, you probably know the criteria of depression, that you got to have
Right.
different symptomology for a period lasting beyond a 2 week time frame, right? So
Right.
for this man who's in my office or in my presence, I'm telling him like, hey, how's your appetite? Are you? When was the last time you had a full course meal and you enjoyed it? How's
Mm-hmm.
your sleep schedule? Are you able to fall asleep on time? Are you staying asleep at night?
Mm-hmm.
Loss of interest or pleasure, man. How you feel about sports? You still
Mm-hmm.
playing ball like you used to? You still,
Right.
you still drawing like you used to, or you find these things interesting as they once were?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, like, I'm asking, are you isolating yourself? You still hanging out with
Mm-hmm.
your teammates, or you
Mm-hmm.
hanging by yourself these days? And
Mm-hmm.
of course, based on our answers, I'm like, oh,
Right.
boss, hey, that's depression. There's nothing
Right.
wrong with it.
Right.
Now that we know what it is, we can treat it. But
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood painted this picture on what depression is.
Yes.
People feel that they have to just stay in bed all day and not answer the phone and not want to move. Like that. That's a good depiction for Hollywood, but in actuality, it can be all those other things surrounding
Right.
it.
Right.
So again, it's also the physical signs and symptoms of it, of course, that I would like to mention to the different guys too. Of course, you got those aches and pains; those things can derive from depression. A lot of people don't know that. Like, and that reckless and risky behavior that men tend to engage in; those things can stem from depression as well. And a lot of people tend not to correlate the two. For a long time, doctors and pretty much everybody else thought the mind and body was separate. But now we
Mm-hmm.
know that they join, they work together, like
Right.
such as your digestive issue. And the number one killer right now among African American men is heart disease. You can
Mm.
have heart disease from untreated depression, like high level of
Mm.
stress. All
Mm-hmm.
of those things can correlate to having depression.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we know the use of alcohol and drugs and
Oh,
stuff like
yes.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Those things can lead to depression. So again, when I break it down like that, the guy tend to understand and be like, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
man, like, I'm interested to hear more." And then of
Mm-hmm.
course, I tell them about the factors and ways that you can be exposed to depression. The genetic factors,
Mm-hmm.
of course, the family history, environmental stress can definitely be an onset of depression, whether that's financial loss or loss of loved one or issues at work and stuff like that in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the illness. Like, just think about the repeated images of the African American man being killed by police right now. That can be
Yes.
depressing for a young man to constantly watch those things and be anxious and have anxiety just trying to figure out, like, hey, am I next? Is it
Yeah.
going to happen to me? Am
Yeah.
I going to be a victim? Or just looking at those numbers of COVID
Mm-hmm.
steady rising, or
Mm-hmm.
just thinking about how I'm going to provide for my family if I can't work, or
Mm-hmm.
what if I get it and stuff like those things tend to lead to depression. Um, so I definitely like employ them to develop a strong support system, identify their triggers, figure out ways to reduce their stress levels, whether that's in the home or the community or the work environment, or,
Right.
hang with positive influences like your peers, your teammates, your siblings, just a strong foundation, and reduce like the negative impacts of it. Like, don't be so angry if somebody asks you what's going on. Like, try to be as supportive as you can to that person that's giving you support. But of course, that person who's offering support has to have patience and encourage them. They have to listen without judgment. Because even with the men, like, women tend to say, "Ain't nothing wrong with you. You'll
Right.
be cool."
Right.
Or like, "I dealt with it, you can deal with it," type thing. So all of those things like impact the stigma.
It does.
And
Yeah.
continue to pile up on the stigma based on those things, and guys tend to, of course, bottle their emotions based on surrounding those things.
Right.
So definitely want to help them, find physical outlets, whether that's running, push-ups or something. Just help them get back to grounded within themselves. Mindfulness, meditation, deep breathing exercises. But for the most part, again, I try to re-educate men on those symptoms of depression, so they can be better, not only for themselves, but of course for their family and the communities and stuff like that. But that's what I found it to be, like a lot of ignorance to what it is, because a lot of men still think it's a female diagnoses or feminine diagnoses, not to the sense of, you're impacting yourself, not only mentally, but physically, if you ignore this thing. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had big athletes, football players and basketball players literally say, like, no, I ain't depressed. That's for cheerleaders. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's, my sister get depressed. I don't get depressed.
Right.
But of course, when I break it down the way I just broke it down to you, they pause and they realize
they get it.
Yeah, I'm tripping. Like, know, I haven't been interacting with my teammates, or I be tossing and turning at night, or I find myself they start breaking it down to themselves once they realize, like, it's criteria. It's based on different criteria. It's not specifically set for any gender. It doesn't discriminate. So once I break it down like that, they tend to understand it.
Yes, I mean, that's perfect. That is perfect, because yes, we do hear the word depression and we want to run. But when you break down the symptoms and stuff, we realize, no, this is a clinical issue. And when you look at it from that perspective, it's very helpful. Something else you touched on, and I know, because I thought about it, and I know my audience will be thinking about it as well. And that is, what can we women do? Because I'll be honest, and I consider myself passionate about Black men, especially and what's going on right now. But it's easy for me, if I see a Black man and he's angry, it's easy for me to just put it in a compartment and not even associate it with the fact that, no, maybe he's depressed. And I know this clinically, that a lot of times anger is a symptom of depression as well. But how do we support men? How do we help men? What can we do to help Black men feel more comfortable being vulnerable?
Well, so it all depends, to be honest with you, because I wouldn't want the young lady or you or any other support system to put themselves in harm's way. So you definitely want to ensure that your safety is taken care of first and foremost.
Yeah.
So if you're in a situation trying to help and trying to extend yourself, and this person is harming you emotionally or physically, then you definitely want to adjust that situation.
Right.
It's okay to support and encourage from afar if that is the case. But if it's not that drastic and you are just trying to offer support because you recognize some signs or symptoms or just want to encourage, then I would definitely suggest, being that ear, being that shoulder, listening without judgment, having some type of compassion, and don't use this information against him in the future, like throw it back in his face. Once he do open up and display a certain level of vulnerability. And of course, they can go to my website. You can direct guys there. There's a resource page.
Good, perfect.
Different articles on my website, www.mentalheal.com.
Love it.
So those are some of the things that you can do. But of course, never ignore the signs or comments that they're making about not only depression, but potentially suicide or harming themselves. Just pay attention. And most importantly, I would say, be patient with them. But again, not so much to where you start to harm yourself, whether you overly worrying or having your own issues from the issues lingering with that male that you're trying to help. Be a resource, like help them find research on depression, or help them identify those symptoms, or let them know what you're seeing differently than what you used to see from them. And of course, you can give them my book too. It's a great way for you guys to exchange dialogue. He do a couple pages, he give it back to you, and you guys process those pages. It might be that he wants to open up and articulate to you, he just don't know how to.
Right.
And the way that he's accustomed to opening up is, of course, that detrimental way, as in being angry or aggressive or displaying reckless behavior and stuff like that.
All right. Love it. We're definitely going to talk about your book at the end, because I definitely know that we'll have some listeners who find it very helpful. I kind of have a question again to piggyback off of something you said. Sure. And that is about, I'm sure you do this in your practice all the time, and I know it's all relative, but you said don't throw things back up in their face. What about things that are, I know, like for instance, money issues, are sensitive, right? Especially for a man who takes a lot of pride in the fact that he is being a provider. So I found I don't even mind being a little vulnerable here. I might say, man, turn the lights off. The light bill is high, or something like that. If it strikes the wrong nerve, you know what I mean? And I might not even be thinking that that's something that maybe it's coming across like I don't think, whatever, he can manage the bill or something like that. Like, how do we work around things? And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, like, with women, like, you can't talk about our weight, for instance. We make that very, very clear. A lot of times we don't know. So sometimes we unintentionally, I think, put down men, but don't understand that we're doing that.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think it all depends on the type of situation, but not throwing it up in his face and holding him accountable is very different, So in this case, I think accountability is important because you're letting them know, like, hey, listen, you're not the same. You're displaying certain actions that you didn't display when we first started dating or when I first met you or whatever the case is. What's going on? Where is that person? Or how can we get back to that person? I think that's very different than saying, well, last week you told me that you wasn't going XYZ or, using it as a weapon. I think those things are two very different, distinct things. So again, accountability is definitely needed and vital in the situation. But if you're using a derogatory situation to make him feel or elicit a certain response, then I think that is detrimental to him wanting to be vulnerable with you again.
That's really important to say, to emphasize. So I'm glad you did that. Thank you. So what type of advice would you give a young Black man who wants to start therapy?
I would definitely suggest, man, it's definitely good that you want to start therapy, which is a good thing. Continue to grow, continue to build. And it's definitely important that you are aware of that situation and that fact that you want to do that, because myself or any other therapist aren't able to pretty much assist you if you didn't recognize that within yourself and if you don't want treatment within yourself. So I would definitely say continue to grow within yourself, continue to process it, do your research, find a therapist that definitely looks like you and definitely is pretty much one that you want to process things with. You do have a say in the matter. A lot of people don't think that they can, interview different therapists or get different consultations, but you can. So I would suggest you do that so you can find the right fit, opposed to just going with any therapist and being turned off by the situation and then casting doubt, thinking that all therapists are like the one that you had the bad experience with. Because that tend to happen. Like, have one bad experience, like, no, I tried it, therapy didn't work. No, you have to ensure that you find somebody who is one in what you want. So definitely do your research and find one that's compatible and relatable to you, whether that means culturally, ethnicity, age-wise, all of those things. You definitely want somebody who is able to assist you the way you wanted to be assisted. You're paying for it. It's your process.
Yes.
You're going to be better for it.
Yes. Very good. And I just want to add off of this, and I don't know what your perspective is on it, but we have to also look at it as an investment. A lot of times we want to go with maybe the one our EAP provides or our insurance provides, and that's good. And if you financially cannot afford it, please, I'm not judging. I'm not knocking you. But I think people also need to understand that, a lot of times you pay for what you get. And if you really want somebody who's qualified and connect with you and has this, education, you might want to think about, is this something I know people who will spend money on some Jordans or some like high name brand stuff, as soon as it drops, but then they'll have some of these symptoms that you're talking about for years that go unaddressed. So I just think it's worth, thinking about, if you have the means, to being able to invest in it if it's something that affects you.
Yeah.
James, what are 3 resources that you have, or even a couple, you don't have to give me 3, but resources that you think you could tap into or offer to Black families, specifically Black men, to help them to heal? One of them is your book, so maybe you can start with that one. How can that help Black men?
Sure. So that can help all men by pretty much assisting them in ways to identify the areas in which they want to articulate, not only for themselves, but of course for their partner, their children, and stuff like that. Um, and it's a healthy way for you guys to exchange dialogue. It's a healthy way for you guys to process different things. Like the man can get this book and learn some incredible techniques about himself. He can identify his triggers. He can identify ways to cope. He can build resilience. He can understand, symptomology of certain areas in which he's displaying certain things. Um, so the book is phenomenal. It's a tool for him to also grow with. He can do this book at 10 years old and come back to it when he's 12 and see if he's still triggered by the same things that he once was triggered by, or see what areas he needs to improve in, or just process and chart his growth. And of course, if he's in a marriage situation, he can do a couple pages. He can give it to his wife, and they can process it together over dinner. They can have these tough conversations in that setting because it's an assignment and it doesn't feel like a chore. So that's one of the ways that the book can be helpful to not only the individual man or the adolescent boy, but of course in couple setting. But another resource that I think that will assist men is pretty much getting back grounded, man, understanding and trying to identify ways to learn about deep meditation and mindfulness. Those things are, I think, an underserved tool because a lot of people don't know how to breathe or don't take time to breathe, and it can be very beneficial. So go to YouTube, download some white noise, just sit back and pause and think, get centered within yourself, and I think it'll definitely do you some justice.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah. And the last one would probably be ignore the perception of others. That can be so detrimental into the growth, especially when people try to group or classify what masculinity or what manhood should be. Like, stay away from those perceptions because it's hindering your growth. You're not as open or as vulnerable with your children or your partner because you don't want to get that perception of being weak or soft or whatever the case is. But if you ignore those outside perceptions, you can have that authentic self, authentic you, and know who you are. And, of course, you'll be happy and healthier for it. The people around you will be vicariously happy and healthier for it because it's you. You're not in the shell. You're not in this bubble of trying to be somebody else or not, being your true self and who you are. So those are the three.
I love it. Can you give me a myth about therapy and Black men and then debunk it?
A myth?
Yeah.
I don't know one off top.
Okay. What about something like Black people don't go to therapy, they go to church?
Well, I mean, so historically and probably as a meme, that sounds about right. Because we, African Americans tend to want to pray it away or have been told to just pray it away. So I would say it is a myth, but I also would say a lot of African Americans are definitely engaging in the ability to find outside healing sources, whether that is yoga, mindfulness, meditation, being holistic now than they previously were based on those myths and stereotypes. But of course, that's part of the stigma and it is still there. But I definitely would suggest you find Jesus and a therapist because they both work. We are.
Yes.
Therapists are the entities placed, like we're given certain criteria and certain abilities from your higher power. So in essence, it still will work. You can have both. Like, you don't have to choose either or. And I think that's what people are confused at. But I definitely think both of them are, interchangeable. They can work.
And you mentioned something really important earlier. You said that heart disease a lot of times is created by stress. But I don't hear a lot of people saying, I'm not going to go to the cardiologist because that's against God. But you understand that a cardiologist was created by God, to help you learn to deal with your heart. And a lot of times people don't understand that's the same God that creates the therapist to help you to work with your mental health.
Yeah, that's definitely it.
Is there anything that you want Black families, particularly Black men, to know that you haven't addressed yet?
Yes, continue to grow within yourself, continue to grow within your family, assist the community as much as possible, whether that's pooling resources, whether that's growing together, just trying to get back centered and grounded within the collective resource. And a lot of people stay away from things like that because they got that individual concept, that individual mindset, but we go farther together and as we grow together. So those things are beneficial to the next generation. It's definitely important that we do that and set the example for the upcoming generation.
Very good, very good. Okay, now it's time for a segment that we call What's Good. So What's Good is a part of the show where we apply the information that you've revealed into what could be a real life scenario for our listeners. Okay, are you ready?
Sure.
All right. Meet Tyshawn. Tyshawn is a 15-year-old African-American male teenager growing up in a lower income area of Chicago. He has dark skin, a heavy build, and stands approximately 6'4". He's really gentle, but due to his size, people often judge him. He is perceived to be more threatening than he is, and with everything going on in the Black Lives Matter movement, he's scared. How can Men to Heal help him?
So pretty much I can assist him with being comfortable with who he is, his size, don't have that derogatory perception of himself based on the views of others. Definitely continue to be gentle, continue to be understanding and compassionate with who he is, and use his size and strength as a tool and not as a weapon that they're pretty much putting that depiction to. So continue to grow within yourself, continue to uplift and encourage your community. And I know living in that Chicago area, he's probably painted as a target more often than as somebody who is that actual gentle and eclectic person.
Right.
So hopefully he can benefit from just being himself and understanding his ability to assist others.
Very good. I love that. Love that. Thank you so much, James. So listen, thank you for coming to the show. I've been so inspired by what you have to say. I know my listeners will as well. Why don't you tell them where they can find you and get more information in case they want to work with you or follow you online?
Sure. You guys definitely can go to my website, www.mentoheal.com, mentoheal.com. Again, it's information about me. My book is on there. My book is also on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart.
Wow.
Those places. And also it's a link to my YouTube page on my website. But if you want to go directly to YouTube, you can and type in Men to Heal, MEN2TO, Heal, HEAL. And check out those videos because there's a video on men and depression. It's a video on trauma, grief, just different videos that can be resources to the men in your life and to the women for that matter. They can process these things or send them to their guy friends or whatever.
Very good.
And of course, you can find me on Instagram, MEN_TO_HEAL.
Awesome. That's amazing. Well, thank you again for coming to the show. Listen, you are doing great work, and I know you are touching people out here who really need to hear from you. It's an honor that you chose to share that gift with us today. We know that it's been helpful. We appreciate you for being here, and thank you for coming.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have fun. I definitely appreciate you, and I wish you continued prosperous success.
Same to you. Take care.
All right.
Okay, bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. Since you've listened all the way through, come on in and join the family. If you haven't done so yet, please join our free community where we offer weekly trainings and monthly giveaways. We can be found on Facebook under the Black Marriage and Families Matter Facebook group.
And since you're serious about joining our family, we also invite you to join our All In campaign, which signifies your commitment to go all in, not only for yourself, but in helping us reach more people by downloading this podcast wherever you are listening to it, leaving us a review, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This really helps us reach more people and change more lives. After all, Dr. Martin Luther King once said, we can all get more done together than we can apart. With that said, I want to encourage you to share this episode with just 3 other people who you think might also benefit from our community and what we are offering, with the hopes that all of you can join our All In campaign. When you're done, simply click the link All In campaign in the bio and receive a free copy of my course entitled Goodbye Toxicity, which is valued at $297. This course will help you to work through some of the difficult experiences that arise in most of our relationships, and it's completely free to you with your commitment to join our All In campaign. We look forward to connecting with you every Monday and Wednesday. Thanks for listening.